are now tuned in to the Lineman Lounge, the world's thickest sports podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Evo.
¿Cómo están, bitches? This is the Lineman Lounge. I'm Mike. That is Evo, and we are back. It is Saturday, and we got some shit to break down today. We are on to the offensive line. That's what this fucking show was made for, the Lineman Lounge, talking about offensive linemen. I'm pumped. Evo, my man, how's everything going out in your neck of the woods? Out here, it's cold. It fucking snowed again, so winter can fuck off. But other than that, I'm pretty pumped, man. We got some dudes to talk about. This is a decent offensive line class. Tackle class is fucking fantastic, though. So, my man, how you doing?
Doing good, brother. Can't complain about the weather out here. We've been, mid 70s. It's already to that point. There's a potential, I guess, for snow overnight, but I doubt it happens. It might get a little bit chillier because we got a little bit of precip coming in, but goes back to being beautiful again next week. We are definitely in the throes of spring here. Actually, yesterday I described it to the lady as, I'm not a big fan of March because it's the pre-come of spring. Just give me that whole load of spring now. Bring on April, which it's right around the corner. So, starting to show off right with euphemisms about come.
There we go.
That's always a good thing. But yeah, everything's going good out here. The lady's nursing a cold, so we're trying to get her back to health a little bit. And I'm a fucking unit. I'm built different, so I don't get sick, which is pretty great. That being said, I do get injured. So a show note to bring up, which I didn't bring up last week. 2 weeks ago, my boys were in town for spring break. The first day that we got them here, got them home from the plane ride, and they were drawing chalk lines out in front of the house on the street and doing some sprints and stuff. And as you know, I have my pro day coming up for, draft selection and everything. And I got challenged by the woman to a foot race. And so I went and put my running shoes on. It didn't really do much stretching. And look, the gun sounded. Just smoked her off the start line and about halfway through, and I don't know the distance. I was like, oh, I am killing it. And so then I put the afterburners on and blew my hamstring out.
And pop that hammy, baby.
It was a large pop in the back of my right hamstring. I thought I legit snapped it in half.
Oh,
it sounds like we are somewhere between a grade 2 and 3 strain, which does involve tears. And actually, you're supposed to be off of it for like 2 to 3 weeks and stuff like that at a minimum with that sort of a strain, but can't afford to do that. So I was actually back at the gym again already. And I was a couple days ago at least. And the lady, we get off the ellipticals and she goes, "Oh my God, your leg is fucked." And I was like, yeah, but I hadn't actually looked at it. The whole back of it's purple, black,
bruised as all fuck.
Yeah. So I couldn't walk for a while. It was through the heel, ankle, calf, up through the hamstring.
Ooh, man, you got yourself good.
That was, pretty painful, but I had a sweet pimp limp for a little bit, needed a cane, I felt like, but we're here now. Either way, could I do my 40 right now? Yes, it would probably be nowhere near where it should be. I feel athletically fine enough where I could actually probably jog with enough stretching, but we still have just a little over a month until combine. But as of right now, pro day is being postponed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get one of these out before the actual draft because, can't risk when we get to training camp and OTAs being injured, and I want to be at my.
You got to be ready.
Listen.
So, if you can't perform as a rookie in training camp, it's tough to make a squad. Very, very tough to make a squad. So heal up. If not, you know what? I'm sure at some point we'll get some footage on you putting in a decent little combine style workout, pro day style workout.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I don't know the last time you've sprinted. I haven't. I've jogged into a bit of a run in more recent memory, but full on sprint, I haven't done since maybe 2016. And so with that being my first true sprint, like I said, I felt good enough where I was like, "Oh shit, I need to open this up.
Yeah.
I need to take the regulators off." And that's when I fucking went. And I felt pretty fucking good until
All the way up until that point where you tore your ass.
yeah. So, you know, I legit was kind of looking forward to seeing what I could actually do there in the 40. I got stopwatches ordered in and everything for it. That
Nice.
have more official looking shit, but right now that is on the back burner for now, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Well, so since we brought references to tearing your ass and some euphemisms about cum earlier, let's talk about what we got going on. We have other shows as well. You can go check out the talk, all part of the new No Sleeves Network. You guys can see that logo up in the top right corner. Go to nosleevesnetwork.com. It's going to contain all of our podcasts, our content channels in terms of gaming, blogs. So everything is going to be housed in there. And we have a couple more people that I'm in the works with about trying to add additional content to that. So we are working on expanding, kind of as we speak. But if you want to get all that stuff, go head over to No Sleeves Network, and you can listen to us bullshit over on the talk about all of those types of things. But brother, you got anything else before we start kind of diving into what today's show is going to be a little bit about?
No, not really. I mean, there's one thing that we kind of have pushed out on the Facebook page, I would suppose that we can bring up. Friend of
Yeah,
the
absolutely, we
show,
should.
Malachi Cooper. We've displayed him on the show before, and he's a fantastic young football player that we are wanting to support. They are doing a kind of fundraising drive right now for football gear and whatnot for this upcoming season for him. Lyman Lounge has already, provided our support for him, and we've taken it's basically a calendar. You select
Right.
a day of the month that you want to donate towards. So if you pick the 13th, you donate $13 XYZ. So either way, we finally were able to talk to the parents and get them to make that a shareable Facebook post. It is on the Lyman Lounge page. It'd be fantastic if you have the means to support. Please support this young man. He's a not just a good athlete and everything, but a stand-up dude being
Oh,
parented the right way.
great kid.
Really good kid. So make sure you go check out that Facebook page if you can. Please support him and show that you're one of the Lyman Lounge faithful that are here to support not just professional football, but the youth talent that we got out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Malachi's a great kid, damn good football player. Don't be surprised when you hear that name at some point on Saturdays, almost certainly, in my opinion. He's going to play on Saturdays for sure, probably at a pretty decent sized school.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I would think that right now he would project to a D1 school at this point.
yeah, he's very, very fucking good. So, but his favorite school is Michigan, so we need to try to don't go Michigan, even though I know you love it up there. But all right, with that said, man, let's start diving into today's show. Today we're going to talk about offensive line prospects. This is the Lineman Lounge. We love offensive line here, but we're going to slide that just to the right, and we're going to talk about some other things that are going on inside the world of sports. Currently, we have March Madness going on. Crazy first round, huge comebacks. Dayton way down, finds a way to come back. Blue bloods like Kentucky go down. March Madness is a great fun time of the year, but I got to tell you, this year I have not really hardly paid attention at all to the men's side of college basketball. The women's side has been much more compelling. And also with the Final Four going to be in Cleveland this year for the women's tournament, it's been a really big hot topic. So the women are they're great, man. I love the storylines that are going on around women's basketball, especially college women's basketball. But Eva, I know you're not a huge basketball fan. Do you get gassed up? Do you get excited about March Madness?
Only when I'm betting, Mike, which
Only
I
when you're
had
betting.
about, after pulling money out of the account, I had about $1.40, $1.50 left in the account, and I made one bet on Sanford to win. They did not win outright. So, I had a hot tip from some Barstool sports people
Yeah.
about Sanford. It didn't pan out. That's all right.
People were hot on Sanford. There was actually a boost. I want to say Mary Kay. No, not Mary Kay Cabot. What the hell is it? Kay Adams. Sorry,
Mhm.
I'm getting my people confused. Kay Adams and Darius Butler had a boost that had, I believe, Sanford as part of their parlay. They were close. They played a good game, but did not get it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, March Madness is going on right now. So if you are so inclined, go check out some college basketball. But
Hey,
the
one
big
of
story.
a school
Go
that
ahead.
I was enrolled in, number 12 GCU. Go
Yeah,
Lopes.
yeah. Grand
Number
Canyon U
12 got their first tournament win as well.
did not make the tournament on either side, men's or women's. Women are in the WIT, I believe, is a tournament they're in. So yeah, we'll leave that there. Other news going on, and this is big fucking news, and it affects the world of baseball. If you're not aware, Shohei Ohtani has had to fire or replace. I'm not sure if he did it or the organization did it. His interpreter. So Shohei Ohtani is Japanese baseball player, one of the greatest in the world. He uses an interpreter because, I mean, not that he can't speak English, but he is not as confident in his English as he is in having his interpreter translate for him. His interpreter seemed like a great guy. They have a great relationship, but there are some chances that his interpreter stole $4.5 million worth of money and was gambling with that. There are also possible connections between Shohei placing bets through his interpreter as a proxy. These are all things that are up in the air. There is a potential investigation being conducted. So when we talk about gambling, gambling with baseball, you got your Black Sox scandals of the old days. Pete Rose, like that is where we're having a conversation about Shohei Ohtani right now, and he is supposed to be the face of baseball. So, with what we know about this right now, is this going to tarnish what Shohei is? How long is this storyline going to stick around? And what do we think the outcome is? Because by all reports, Shohei doesn't give a fuck about any other sport but baseball. So where are you landed on this, man?
It's too early in the process for me. Like I said, I've only passively paid attention to what's been going on. So I don't like villainizing or completely giving judgment until we really figure out what's going on. It's so early in the process. They don't know if that connection is really there, other than the fact that his interpreter was betting. $4.5 million.
That's a
That's
lot.
that's a lot of money, and it's while Shohei has a lot of money, it's still a substantial amount to just be stolen or go missing. So I'm curious if that's been an over time thing, or if all of a sudden, like, the guy just pulled the 4.5 somehow from him and made a shitload of bets or one big bet or something like that. Um, but that's where, when you're making that sort of money, you also have financial advisors and assistants and stuff like that, money managers essentially that'll watch over your stuff. And I'm pretty sure that they would notice either the skimming or especially just that chunk going missing. Um, so that's what kind of gives me some pause and is curious to me is I want to know, was it over time? Was it in a chunk? That sort of thing, because that I think is going to be a lot more telling of Shohei's involvement and things like that, or if they noticed that that money went missing all of a sudden, and they were in the investigation stage of being like, "Where did this money go?" and then found out that he had bet or something, that would help vindicate Shohei in this. But I think we can both say on the show that we're fans of Shohei and his game. Like, he's been fantastic. He's great for
Absolutely.
baseball. One of the best things for baseball out there right now. Um, so I'd like to hope the best that, his involvement is not really there other than, someone trying to take advantage
Employing
of
the guy
his
that did it.
situation. Yeah. But still got to kind of wait and see. Now, I mean, if it comes out that Shohei was involved in this, then we are looking at another, Rose situation here, and it's going to be devastating for Shohei, devastating for the game of baseball.
I mean, his career will be over if that is the case, where they find that he was betting on baseball while playing in games. Like Pete Rose is banned, and he's the hit leader all time. So Shohei, a guy that we all love, is the face of baseball right now, but hasn't truly accomplished that level of greatness like he's capable of. That'll be the end of it. He'll have to tuck tail and go back to Japan. Not that there's bad baseball being played in Japan, but there will also be a stigma if he goes back there to play. Like, are all these games on the up and up? So I really hope for Shohei's sake that he has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of where I'm coming from right now, but it's still so early. We'll see what ends up happening with this. I'm sure there's going to be relatively deep investigation. It would be surprising. I mean, you would want to think that if MLB is the one doing the investigation in on this, that they're probably going to want to be on Shohei's side just because of how important he is to the game of baseball. And it's going to be a bad look for the MLB as well if this comes out.
That's not a fucking surprise, though, based on the way things have gone with Rob Manfred as their commissioner.
Yeah. But who knows? Obviously, again, hope for the best that Shohei's involvement is minimized or not really involved at all.
Absolutely. But okay, so that was baseball. We talked a little bit of college basketball. We're just ready to start talking some NFL stuff.
Yes,
because
sir.
there's some other news, competition committee stuff, as well as a trade that we need to discuss before we start diving into these prospects.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So L'Jarius Sneed yesterday was traded. Chiefs cornerback, one of the better cornerbacks in the league, was traded to the Titans. I don't have the full pick compensation up, but it was actually relatively minimal for what I would be expecting of his talent. I believe the highest traded pick was a 3rd round pick from the Titans. Sneed is a little bit older. He's towards the tail end of his prime probably, and is going to get paid. There's already contract stuff worked out apparently between him and the Titans. And good for the Titans. I mean, they're going to get a very good cornerback. They're a team that is really deep in a rebuild right now. That's where I kind of question, should they have made this move or not, just because long-term future for the team, I don't see L'Jarius being a long-term part of their future as far as a top-end player, just because cornerbacks at that age are going to start to have a fall off a little bit over time. But when you look at the compensation that they had to give up, it really wasn't that much.
Pretty small, yeah.
So, and if it seemed like, as of everything that I had heard recently was that the Chiefs and L'Jarius were going to work something out under that franchise tag. But it's just another piece of that Chiefs team that has ended up departing. A big part of that defense, and it kind of immediately upgrades the need for cornerback on that team, where they could absolutely be looking at one now in the 1st round of the draft. So I mean, 2 biggest needs on that team: wide receiver and cornerback now.
Yeah, wide receiver, cornerback for sure. And then pick compensation. So I've got it pulled up here. They've got a 3rd round pick in 2025, so not even this year, and then a 7th round pick swap 2024. So very minimal draft capital had to be given up by the Titans to go out and get him. However, this article here on ESPN does say that this new deal will be for 4 years and make L'Jarius Sneed one of the highest paid defensive players or defensive cornerbacks in NFL history. So he's going to get a massive deal. He's going to have it for 4 years. So the Titans they're making the investment like this is going to be a long-term solution. But L'Jarius is getting up there a little bit in years. And I don't think that the Chiefs could realistically afford to pay him what he's going to be paid out in Tennessee. With all the numbers and all the contracts that are continuing to rise for that Chiefs team, with the re-signings of Chris Jones and all of that, it just they weren't able to make that work.
This is kind of the difficult part of having a really good quarterback on your team, is that you have to make extremely difficult financial decisions for the long-term future. Patrick Mahomes obviously is worth every penny that he's being paid. But that being said, team building, I've talked about this a lot with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins situation. Team building matters, and you can't build a team around a quarterback who cannot elevate the team, especially when that quarterback is due a whole bunch of money. It doesn't seem to matter what the Chiefs do. They've got Mahomes. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be good, and they're going to, be vying for a championship. We saw that offense take a big, big step back this year, and they had the defense lead them through the playoffs. And, that was after getting rid of a Tyreek Hill, where we thought, the production was going to go down, and it did, but they still were able to be a winning football team because a team with Patrick Mahomes is always going to be competitive like that. Whereas other teams, if you're not talking about a top 3, top 5 quarterback, at some point in time, the contract is going to become very difficult to be tenable as far as re-signing and bringing other players in. Um,
Mhm.
I'll say this about Snead. I think that he's a very good cornerback, but I think that he is a little bit overrated because that defense is so good. It is easier to look really good. And I mean, when you have a line like the Chiefs did, when you have a Chris Jones providing pressure, it makes that job of the cornerback so much easier. And I think it has made him look better than he is. And that's not to say that he is not good. I still think that he could be a top 10, top 15 corner in this league. But it'll be interesting to see how good he really is with the Titans when age starts to take a factor. And obviously, that team and that defense is nowhere near as good as what he had there in Kansas City. So, um,
They are
you
getting
know,
better out there in Tennessee. They had to make some moves to get that secondary better, but their secondary's been fucking terrible for years.
yeah,
But they go out and they get into Chidobe Awuzie. Now they trade for L'Jarius Sneed. So that back end is going to be way better for the Titans, but they were
yeah,
so bad for so long.
yeah, and that's the thing is it's not like again, it's no disrespect to L'Jarius Sneed. I think that he's just a little bit overrated by some because his performance was so good
Oh
on
God,
such a
behind
good
him.
Chiefs defense. Um, But this is just it is part of the nature of the game when you have good quarterbacks, they're gonna be the focus, they're gonna be the financial focus, and it's gonna make you have to make some difficult financial decisions on players within your own squad. And that's why once you get that prime quarterback, it is so important that you start to have good, consistent drafts to replenish talent, because otherwise you're not gonna be able to be bringing in free agents all the time or re-signing your own guys if they start to excel because a lot of that money is going to the quarterback. So that's why it's so important for teams. You've got kind of two ways to structure things. Either you have a fantastic team with a so-so quarterback, and the team is able to make the quarterback look really good and take you to a championship, or you have a really, really good quarterback and the rest of the team kind of suffers, but that quarterback is just so transcendental that he's able to make you a championship roster.
Well, one thing that I will always remember about L'Jarius Sneed, though, is the time that he jammed Tyreek Hill into the fucking core of the earth. That was insane. Like, that was so impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
But all right. Anything else news wise in terms of player movement that we want to talk about before we talk about some of the rule proposal changes that are coming to the NFL and the competition committee? Now, nothing has changed officially yet, but there has been proposals for rule changes. You got any other
Yeah,
player movement?
not too much. I mean, we're kind of in that second, third wave of free agency right now where you're seeing a lot of depth pieces and things like that being signed. We did have Mike Williams going and signing with the Jets, which might take away some of their need for a wide receiver there. It's just a little bit scary because Mike Williams, while he's been a very good receiver in his time in the league, he's had a lot of injuries, and then he's going to the Meadowlands, which is notorious for eating players' knees up. So we'll see if or when he'll be able to get back on the field and how long he'll actually be able to stay there on the field. But assuming that he's able to stay healthy the entire time, that team definitely was looking for wide receiver help. It can be looked at as a narrowing of their needs going into the first round. I truly thought offensive line, specifically tackle, was a top need for them, but there's been a lot of talk of Brock Bowers or a wide receiver, depending on who's there. And I could
They
see both of
have
those a little bit less
weapons.
on
They
wide receiver.
have dudes that can move the ball there. Like Mike Williams is a really good ad, but I feel like it's not. We're starting to get overkill. They need to find a way to protect whoever the fuck is playing quarterback, whether that's Aaron Rodgers coming off the Achilles or whoever the hell else they decide to put in there. If Aaron struggles getting back or being Aaron Rodgers of old, their offensive line has been fucking atrocious. If they don't attack offensive line, this is, in my opinion, another total mismanagement by the Jets fucking GM and their front office, making this team get better and be competitive.
Yeah, and they've made a couple moves as free agency to try to add to the line, but nothing super substantial yet. I mean, there's some addition by subtraction. There's some guys that are brought in that'll be starters that are going to be better than previous starters, but they're still not, top end guys. And what we're going to be getting into here in a little bit, that offensive line group, specifically the tackle group, this is potentially the best tackle class that I have seen in my time of paying attention to the NFL draft. I know a lot of scouts are talking about this being one of the best tackle groups that they've ever seen. And so it is the perfect time for the Jets to go out there and get that tackle help, which is really what they need, especially on that left side. So again, I do think that it would be a failure as far as their investments to not go out there and get that offensive line help, but we'll see. You never know with the New York Jets.
With the Jets, you absolutely never know. All right. So let's switch over then. Let's start talking about some of these offensive line prospects. We'll work interior to exterior. So we'll start center and work out. And go ahead.
Did you want to go over the rule changes?
Yeah, fuck that. Let's go over the rules first, because there's some interesting things that could happen here. We might actually get kickoffs back being a fun play to watch.
Yeah. So I believe it is this week coming up that they're going to be doing, or owners are going to be meeting, going over some new potential rule changes. And there's two main ones that are on the docket that people are really paying attention to. One being the hip drop tackle and the banning of it, and two is the NFL's new kickoff rule proposal. So we can go with the kick or the hip drop tackle real quick. For people who don't know, it's kind of tackling from the side and dropping by the hip. It's notorious for causing injuries. There's been a lot of player backlash against this potential rule change because, look, football is a violent game. I get some of the concussion stuff. We feel like it has become a little bit more patty cake recently. And we're talking about an era of players that are athletic freaks and things like that.
Faster and stronger than they've ever been.
You do have to adjust rules and stuff like that for player safety as the player evolves and the game evolves. But this is just a tough one because at some point in time, it's going to get rid of tackling altogether. And I know that's kind of a common trope, but like these hip drop tackles, I don't know that hip drop tackles are trained, not like before where you were trained to, before head up drills and leading with your face mask and stuff like that. Like the helmet was a weapon that was used, and we've trained that out, but it was trained in previously, and now it's been trained out. Hip drop tackles is not something that you go into practice. And today we're practicing hip drop tackles. It's not a thing. It is tackles that you train for. And
trying to get guys on the fucking ground, and you don't care how you have to do it. So if you have to drop your weight to get him on the ground, that's how you end up with a hip drop tackle. I have never coached it. I don't know if people are coaching it, like just to do that, because it would make way more sense to me to be in a better tackling position. A hip drop tackle always comes when you're in a bad fucking position.
Exactly. That is when you are losing the battle of the tackle and you are having to do whatever you can to get the guy down. I truly believe that it is not something that is trained. Like you said, and that's the perfect thing, is you are not in a good tackling position. And it is a result of not being in a good tackling position that forces you to make awkward moves to get the guy down on the ground. It is not intentional, but it's a necessity. And at the end of the day, it is just a part of football. When you have a Jerome Bettis running at you and you are a cornerback that's 5'9", 180 pounds, you might end up having to do more of a hip drop style tackle just out of pure physics necessity to try to get a guy down. It's not like you're trying to do a hip drop tackle. It's just you're trying to get yourself on the ground while holding on to this player as much as possible. So hopefully they come with you, and that can create some issues as far as side of the legs and things like that, which are more vulnerable to injuries where guys can get hurt. Either way, we don't preach ever for players to get hurt, and we don't want them to get hurt. but this is a game that is violent. It is a game that is going to have injuries. We see non-contact injuries and things like that just because these guys are athletic specimens doing crazy shit. I
Mhm.
ran 30 yards or something like that and fucked up my hamstring, and I'm about to be 35 years old here in a couple months. These guys are playing in, their 20s into their 30s and 40s now and stuff like that, and these things are just gonna happen.
Mhm.
But we've seen major player outrage for this rule because they're like, "What the fuck am I supposed to do?" You know?
Yeah, and that's actually something that I brought up. So Richard Sherman has been one of the more vocal people about banning the hip drop tackle is just asinine because it it doesn't it's not coached. I don't think. I think I don't know if he specifically said that, but he's making the point that listen, if I'm trying to tackle somebody, I'm a he's a fucking grown man. He's a professional athlete. I'm not gonna let another grown man drag my ass down the field. Like I'm gonna do what I need to do to get him on the ground. And I 100% it makes sense to me. So you're going to do whatever you need to do to get him on the ground. I posed the question, and Richard Sherman was nice enough to answer back over on Twitter. I asked if this hip drop tackle does become outlawed, and it's not just outlawed; it's going to come with a 15-yard penalty and an automatic fucking first down. Are we going to see the Gator roll come back into our tackling technique? Richard Sherman talked about on Twitter that they used to teach the hawk roll technique. When he was with the Seahawks, grabbing the legs, rolling down. We actually saw Chris Carson with 2-3 years ago get one leg caught, and then defensive tackle goes into the Gator roll, ends up tweaking Chris Carson's knee. Now, none of that is illegal. None of that is going to trigger a 15-yard penalty, but it can be effective at getting a guy on the ground. But it's also going to come with a massive injury risk as you are spinning, gator rolling on the ground, trying to rip this person down to the ground by one or both of their legs. So defenders are going to find whatever they can to get these dudes on the ground. Hip drop tackles, I understand, have caused injuries, but gator roll tackles are going to cause injuries. The only thing that's not going to cause an injury is a pure good form tackle or just going in and hitting. But hitting in the NFL has not been as effective as it has been in the past because the athletes are bigger, faster, and fucking stronger. And the strike zone has now moved into such a small area where you can hit these guys that it's become almost impossible for guys to play really good defense, especially if you're at the corner or the safety position where you're going to be out heighted or outweighted for sure. So something's going to happen. They're going to find ways to get on the ground. But if we see this hip drop tackle be illegal, I would not be surprised to see more dudes with one leg in their arms rolling around on the ground, fucking gator rolling them to get these guys down, leading to twists, torn knees, and things like that.
Yeah, which you have the NFLPA, the Players Association, which is out there to protect and look out for the players themselves to like take care of those guys. They are against this rule change because they understand that while injuries can occur from hip drop tackles, you are also hurting the players out there on the field. You are hurting the game by doing this. And one of the things that they have brought up is that with every sort of rule change that has happened, whether it's been ways to hit the quarterback and things like that, all these different quarterback rule changes, the NFL in their proposals have said, hey, this is what an illegal play looks like. And they're able to show video of it. And then they're able to come with second video and say, this is how we want you to perform now. This is what you should be doing in this situation, such as wrapping up the quarterback and slamming him onto the ground, right? The body drop, that's illegal. Well, they show a video of, okay, you've got him in the clinch, don't drop him, hold him, and that's it. And once they're in the
You're
clutch,
waiting to rally
yeah,
to make a tackle. Like there's not a other side of this is what you could do instead.
yeah, like once the quarterback's in the clutch, the ref is supposed to call the play at that point
Right.
for player safety, for that quarterback safety. With the hip drop tackle, there's no, this is what you should do instead.
Right.
It's just a form tackle, right? That you're supposed to be doing instead. But if you're in a situation where your option is the hip drop tackle, they don't have a like just hold them or something like that. That the NFL isn't proposing this is what you should do instead. They're just saying don't do this. And without the NFL even knowing what an actual other option is, what is the purpose of moving forward with this? You're basically just outlawing part of the game that has a potential for injury, but you're not giving any sort of explanation as to what you should be doing instead. So the only other explanation at that point in my mind is stop playing football. Like it just doesn't compute with me. I understand player safety is important and all that stuff. We're not saying that at all, but there has to be lines drawn at some point saying this is a violent game. These things are going to happen. It is unfortunate. Like we can't outlaw all of these things, otherwise we will not have football anymore.
Right. And another thing that I don't think people are realizing, especially the NFL, like if you go back and you brought up like the changing of the rules for how we protect the quarterbacks on the sacks, right?
Mm.
What has happened is that is now being overcalled and over regulated to the point where tackles that are not supposed to be penalized are being penalized because it's become a point of emphasis. It's illegal to do it this way. So we're seeing more and more flags every fucking week. Turn on any game. At some point, you're going to see a rough in the passer penalty that should not have been a rough in the passer penalty because the way the rules have changed. So the subjectivity of, is this a hip drop tackle? Is this not a hip drop tackle? Is going to be way overblown. And it's going to be a fucking flag fest for a little while every time it looks like it was possibly where you left your feet and your weight is no longer down, 15 yards, first down, 15 yards, first down. Teams will march right down the fucking field off of penalties if there's not an other way to be described on what you should do in the situation, and they're going to overregulate. That's what happens every single time.
Yep. So I think it's fair to say the Lineman Lounge against the banning of the hip drop tackle.
Correct.
And we are pro football.
Yeah, pro football, anti
hip drop tackle regulation.
Yeah, that's it. The specification of football. What?
Yeah. All right. Well, the other major rule change that has been discussed is the NFL's new kickoff rule proposal. So the NFL kickoffs have been changed multiple times in the past decade because kickoffs have been deemed one of the more violent or dangerous plays out there for players. You have guys sprinting from one side of the field to the other and smashing, basically your old school hamburger drill multiple times a game. Kickoffs have in the past been a lot of fun where you get guys like a Cordero Patterson, a Devin Hester, some of these elite returners, a Joshua Cribbs, elite returners out there. And a kickoff return is one of the most explosive plays in football. It's demoralizing the other team. It's super fun as a fan to watch, but we are seeing that,
especially when they were allowing the wedge.
Yes, but we're not seeing that anymore because the kickoff has essentially been neutered to the point where it's almost unnecessary to be in the game for the most part. Especially, last year, the new touchback rules where you don't even have to kick it into the end zone. The player can just call a fair catch.
Fair catch.
And yeah. So the NFL is looking to make sure that special teams still matter in the game, that the kickoff still matters in the game, and they are attempting to adopt a kickoff that is nearly identical to what's being done in the XFL. So we have a graphic here that we're going to pull up of the kickoff rule proposal. I'm going to start reading off what the new proposal is here. So the ball is going to be kicked from the 35-yard line, which is the same as the current rule. And safety kicks would be from the 20-yard line, which is the same as the current rule. For the alignment, all kicking team players other than the kicker will line up with 1 foot on the receiving team's 40-yard line. The kicker cannot cross the 50-yard line until the ball touches the ground or a player in the landing zone or that receiving team until it touches over there or until it goes in the end zone, something like that. The 10 kicking team players cannot move until the ball hits the ground or a player in the landing zone or the end zone. The receiving team will line up as follows. They have a setup zone, which is a 5-yard area from the 35-yard line to the 30-yard line, where at least 9 receiving team players must line up. At least 7 players with foot on the 35-yard line, or the restraining line, as they're going to call it, with the alignment requirements outside the numbers, numbers to the hashes and inside the hashes. Players not on the restraining line must be lined up in setup zone outside of the hash marks. And all players in the setup zone cannot move until that kick has hit the ground or a player in the landing zone or the end zone. A maximum of 2 returners may line up in the landing zone and can move at any point prior to during the kick. So this is basically, hopefully this graphic makes sense. Obviously, we have no wedge blocks again. You can have
bullshit.
that 8 players or so in the setup zone. You have a no blocking area prior to the ball hitting the ground. It is basically, the blockers are going to be very close to one another again, where they're going to, as soon as that ball ends up getting to a receiver or touching the ground, those blockers are going to be able to engage very quickly. And that is going to give those returners a wide open area of deciding, where do I want to go with this ball? Now, what I'll say for this new kickoff rule change, which I believe I am for as of right now.
I am
It
as
is
well, but I do worry that there will be something that just negates this entirely. Go ahead.
potentially, yeah. This is going to make special teams different. A lot of times on kickoffs previously, you would see linemen out there and things like that. Like you'd see not necessarily your most hyper athletic players. You would still have some big guys out there, especially when wedge blocks were a thing. This is going to be a lot more of your athletic guys, where teams are going to want to carry maybe more cornerbacks and safeties and things like that. Athletic linebackers. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to be able to get out there, provide some blocking and stuff like that. But you've got to be athletic enough to move around. Like we're not talking about, a 10-yard zone where most guys are playing, or a 15-yard zone where most guys are playing. This is where the whole field is really going to be open on one half of the ball, and your super athletic, twitchy returners are going to have a lot of room to play with, and the teams are going to be able to set up a lot of different looks to returns now. This, rule changes initially were put out there for safety concerns. My understanding is that the XFL, who has a rule nearly identical to this, they have had basically almost 100% kicks being returned to some extent. And also, they have had no injuries, no contact injuries from this rule change. Like 0. Non-contact, they don't count because that can happen on any play. And it's not seen as a special teams thing. But apparently, the concussions and things like that, those other injuries have completely been eliminated by instituting this play. Now that's anecdotal, but all of these things are anecdotal. They're going off of data and statistics from these things, saying that special teams is one of the more violent, especially kickoffs are one of the more violent plays out there. That's anecdotal information and data that's collected over years and stuff like that and analyzed. The same thing is being done with those XFL plays. Apparently it is that much safer. And it's going to make, to me, we're going to, assume that this rule gets accepted. Kickoffs are going to matter a lot.
Yeah.
The players, it is immediately going to bring special teams returners back into the fold, and teams really seeking those guys out. And we are going to see a lot more big time kick returns and touchdowns on kickoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Now, does the rule thing, and I don't know if you said it, I might have missed it. If there is a touchback, like ball through the end zone, where's the ball come out to?
So actually, I didn't even get through. I just went through the alignment and setup and stuff. So the landing zone is the area between the receiving team's goal line and its 20-yard line. Any kick that hits short of the landing zone is treated like a kickoff, out of bounds, and the ball is spotted at the 40-yard line. So if you kick it way short, it goes to the 40. The play will be blown dead as soon as the kick lands short of the landing zone. Any kicks that hit in the landing zone must be returned. So it gets in the landing zone.
Between the 0 and the 20, you got to return that shit. No fair catching.
Correct. Kicks that hit in the end zone stay inbounds, returned or downed. If downed, then the touchback goes to the 35-yard line.
Okay, so that's huge. Because if I'm a kicking coach, I'm telling my kicker, you kick this ball through the end zone every single fucking time. But it sounds like they've written in a rule to make sure that that doesn't happen, because if you do, you're going to give them the 35 instead of the 25.
Yep, and any kick that goes out the back of the end zone in the air or by bouncing is a touchback as well. So this basically, if you are able to have this, almost goes back to the whole coffin corner punting type of drill. If you are able to have a kicker that can legitimately place a kick between the 10-yard line and the 0 and have that ball kind of sit, not roll through the back of the end zone, you are forcing the returner. He has to return it. He can't take that 35-yard touchback, essentially. You are forcing him to return it at that point. So if you're able to
kick that
get a ball,
motherfucker as high as you can, because nobody is going to be running. So this is going to really change the way everything looks.
Yeah. It's very interesting to me. I want to see it in practice, but it's exciting to me. Special teams is theoretically supposed to be 33% of the game. You have offense for 33%, defense for 33%, and then special teams for the other 33%. Right now, it is basically nothing other than extra points and field goals. But this is really going to bring it back in the fold if this is the case, because kickoffs are going to be potential scoring plays every time now, unless you have an elite kickoff specialist, both as a returner and a kicker. Because again, it's the kickers, like you said, high ball flight, and you're going to look for guys that can legitimately drop it within a 10-yard range every time to get it between the 0 and the 10. And you're also going to be looking at guys that can return the ball and that are just twitchy, those Devin Hessers and Cordero Pattersons and stuff like that we haven't really seen used in such a long time.
Or your Naheem Hines.
Yeah.
Shout out Naheem Hines, who just joined the Browns.
If he can stay healthy. Yeah. But yeah, Hines is absolutely a great special teamer. So miscellaneous stuff here. No fair catch or signal is allowed. Officials will blow the play dead. If conditions cause the ball to fall off the tee twice, then the kicker will be allowed to use a kicking stick to keep the ball in place. So no longer do they have to have a player come back and hold the ball. The closest covering official will pick up the stick immediately after the kick. So there's going to be an official near that kicker. The kicking sticks, if you haven't seen those, they're used in practice. Basically, the ball is set down. The kicker puts this little tripod stand on it. But that official will be close by and he'll quick pick up the stick so that no one gets impaled or anything. Onside kicks. Fourth quarter begins. The team trailing has the opportunity to declare onside kicks to the official. All right. The current onside kickoff rules apply. If onside kicks go beyond the setup zone untouched, the kicking team is penalized for UNS, whatever that means. Return team would start the drive at the 20-yard line. Penalties. The setup zone and landing zone will not change with any penalties that carry over to kickoffs. Alignment of the 10 kickoff team players and all receiving team players would not change. Only the spot of the kick would move. So all of the stuff that you see on your screen right now would stay the same. If there is a penalty that carries into the kick, it is just the location of the kicker that would change.
Oh, that's interesting. So if the kicker he would be kicking from, say, he moves up and kicks from what, the 45 or the 50 if you're hitting from like a roughing the kicker on the extra point. He's kicking from the 50 where those guys are already fucking standing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now the kicker is set up at the 25. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Again, I want to see this in practice. Yeah. Penalties on a scoring play will not carry over and will be taken on the try. Penalties on the try
there we go.
carry over, and if they do, only the placement of the kicker changes. Okay. For safety kicks, the kick will be from the 20-yard line, and the kicker will have the option to use a tee. The setup zone and the landing zone will not change. So no longer is it a punt for the safety.
Oh, wow. You could
Kicker has an
send your
option to use a
kicker
team
out
from the
there.
20. All right. Um, approved rulings. The special teams working group will continue to work with the officiating department to examine any necessary approved rulings and or additional language that may be necessary to support the new rule. The language will be vetted with the clubs, circulated for comment to all the clubs, and finalized by the May meeting for the membership. So, new potential kickoff rule there.
Actually, I love that rule. That rule I am in favor of, but not the hip drop tackle banning.
All right, let's see here if I can actually present. Got a little video here. I'm going to try to not. Oops. Share screen. This looks right. So I'm going to try to not have the audio going with this, but I believe we're actually going to see some movement of that previous graphic here.
All right, here we go.
Kicking team will kick 35. 10 members of the kicking team will line up on the receiving team's 40-yard line. A minimum of 9 members of the receiving team will line up between the 30 and 35-yard lines. Play begins when the ball is either caught or hits the ground in the landing zone or is returned from the end zone. Any kick that hits in the landing zone must be returned. Any kick that bounces from the landing zone to the end zone must be returned or downed by the team receiving for a touchback. If a kick fails to reach the 20-yard line, the receiving team takes possession at the 40. If the ball enters the end zone in the air, the receiving team can return it or down it and take the possession at the 35. If the ball goes out of bounds, the receiving team takes possession at the 40. That's generally normal.
Yep.
No fair catches. Onside kicks permitted in the fourth quarter. Setup and landing zones do not change after penalties or a safety. Only the spot where the ball kicked is changed.
Okay. So that was a little different than the way I was imagining it in my mind.
Mhm.
So they are closer to the returners than I thought.
Yep.
Okay. So this is going to be fun, man. I'm excited to see this. I hope that this goes through. Or has it already been approved?
It hasn't.
Next week.
This is, I believe it is this coming week. So it's still Saturday today. So sometime this within the next 7 days, I believe, is when these owner meetings are going to happen. My gut feeling is that they are going to approve this, but they're not going to approve it for the season, that they are going to do a test in the preseason, which they've done previously for rules, which normally doesn't carry over into the regular season that year. But then next offseason, they'll be like, hey, did we like this or not? Personally, I would kind of like them to just fucking send it for a year and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because, look, if you've got a special teams player on your team already, a returner specifically, that is really good, is immediately going to jump your special teams up there. And those players, look, it's good for the players. So those guys are going to get paid more, return specialists and stuff like that. Kickers, it's going to give them a reason to be paid a little bit more. So from the NFLPA's perspective, they're going to be like, hell yeah, we can get some of our guys better contracts and things like that. But like for teams like you, who just picked up a Naheem Hines, who this would benefit. For me right now, the Vikings still have, I'm going to forget his, Kene Nwangwu on our team, who before these rule changes was a very good kick returner and had a couple returns for touchdowns. I would like to see what he can do, even though he's a little bit more of a straight line runner. Cordero Patterson, I believe right now, is still a free agent. Yeah, he's up there in age, but a team's probably going to take a flyer on him at that point.
As a
returner,
returner, if this rule goes in place for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to see a lot of guys. Look, it's just going to be a lot of fun, I think, if they do this. I expect the NFL to accept it because as of right now, kickoffs are pointless for the most part. Special teams on the kickoffs is not viewed as a big part of the game. The NFL doesn't want to lose that part of the game. This would be a good thing for football, in my opinion.
I 100% agree. Hopefully it goes in, and we get to see some badass return plays. Man, it's been so long since we've got to really enjoy it. That was the area they attacked when concussions came up. It was special teams. It was no more wedge. change where the kickoff is located, like all of that changed because of the concussions. So this has a way to bring that back to kind of where we were before, which makes me excited because, I mean, they're exciting, fun plays. I still think we should bring the wedge back, but that also means that you are going to bring a wedge buster back, and that guy's for sure going to get a concussion.
If I'm looking for the negatives in this, again, like I kind of brought up, yes, the returner is going to be real close to his blocking unit, or closer than you would expect to his blocking unit. That being said, I still think when you have some of those elite returners, those guys are going to, at a much higher clip, break off big runs and touchdowns. And my fear would be that, when you're talking about an offense being on the field, they could score on their first play, or they could have a 13-play drive that bleeds the clock down and they end up getting a field goal at the end of it and still scoring. But, you're talking about a lot of plays versus a singular play where I think that we could start to see a much higher clip of scoring. And it's going to make me question, should a return touchdown count for 6 points and things like that, if it starts to become like you have a Devin Hester out there who 40% of the time that he gets a kick, he's taking it to the house or something like that. That would be a problem.
I mean, you just kick that fucking thing out of bounds.
You kind of
kick it out of the end zone. Give him the 35.
Yeah. But that's it'll bring a different dynamic to the game. Special teams coordinators are going to have to give a lot of thought to this, of how to appropriately prepare for it. And I think that the play setup, like you used to see that a lot more special teams, like we talked about the wedge or shading to the left, shading to the right, things like that. You're going to see legitimate plays happening, like drawn up plays. This is how we are going to.
Oh, the reverses that you can run off of this are going to be fucking spectacular to see.
With up to 2 returners back there and stuff. Yeah. It'll be really interesting.
And I think it's going to change the definition of what an elite returner, like the traits you're looking for, are. So a lot of times you have a guy, and people do it different ways. Like Devin Hester was excellent in his agility, like change of direction, start, stop was insane. Whereas like a Josh Cribbs was a bigger guy, really good straight line speed, could run through tackles, but had excellent vision. This now, I think you're going to need those guys who really have that short area quickness, because everything's going to be compacted when they catch the ball. So a guy that you maybe don't consider somebody you'd want to be a returner right now will become one with that short area quickness. Dudes that run excellent 3-cone drills, like those guys are going to be guys that you're like, let's go try you out at kick return. Like
I imagine a Reggie Bush in this situation.
Oh yeah, that's exactly who you want. Yeah. That short area quickness is going to be crucial as a returner.
Yep. All right. Well, so those are the 2 major rule changes. We are just now hitting the hour mark of the show. I think it's time for us to jump into these offensive line prospects that we're going to be looking at coming up here for the NFL draft very shortly. Mike, like you were saying before we got into the rules, we're going to kind of start from the outside in: tackles, guards, centers, so on and so forth. So again, I've done pretty extensive deep dives into all this stuff. So we're going to go with you, Mike, here. Guys that you want to talk about with these tackles in this tackle group. I'm going to make sure that I list off for everyone names that stick out for me, and guys going into the later rounds, especially, I'll try to cover guys who are legit potential day one starters at each of these positions, at least through the first 2 rounds, and then some of those names later on in the draft. But I know that you've got a list of names there of guys that you want to go out in each of these positions.
Yeah, man, there's some fun guys in this tackle class. Now, obviously, there's the dudes that we know are going to be legit. Like, I didn't do a write-up on Joe Alt because I don't fucking need to. Joe Alt's a stud. Like, we know what Joe Alt is, or at least what he looks like and projects to be. Now, some of these guys that I do have, they're going to be first rounders, a couple of them for sure. But there's some things about their game that you like, maybe don't like. So we'll start with my first guy, Tyler Guyton. He's fun and he's fucking huge. 6'8", 322. Reminds me of a DeJuan Jones, and just based off the pure size comparison. This is another guy that in my opinion, could be really, really good. Step in, but he's not a 100% clean prospect in my mind. He kind of struggles in the run game a little bit because he's so goddamn big. 6'8" is not easy to drop the hips and sink in the hips and dig a guy out. And he's a right tackle. So as a right tackle, I want to see a guy that can move people out of the fucking way, but I don't know if he'll ever truly be a great run blocker. But his pass blocking is exceptional because he's so tall, he's so long, he's able to keep you away. We saw DeJuan Jones be able to do this against really good pass rushers like a TJ Watt. That play length is just huge. I love this kid. He's going to need a little bit of grooming, though, when he gets there. He's going to go in the first round, but is he a guy that I expect to come in and right away be a world beater? Not necessarily. What do you have on a Tyler Guyton?
Look, I love Tyler Guyton. I absolutely think he's going to be a first round pick. If a team really gets high on him, I think you're talking middle of the first round is where you're starting to look at a guy like this. The thing is that there's a lot of tackles that are going to go in this first round, in my opinion. But Guyton, so despite his size, is one of the most athletic, gifted tackles in this class. He just is sorely lacking technique. Over at Oklahoma, they did not
Hasn't
coach
played
him
a
up
lot.
enough. He was a defensive end coming into college before they transitioned to the offensive line. The coaches at the Senior Bowl were raving about Tyler Guyton. Like, he's a team leader. He is extremely like, after every play, he was going to the coaches, "What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Teach me how to do better." Like, he is a sponge wanting to be filled up with information. He's the perfect type of guy that a coach is looking for because he is hyper coachable and he has everything that you want athletically from him. He's just lacking that technique. He projects well to the right side, but I think that because of those athletic traits, if you are able to sit and work with him long enough, he could be one of those really good left tackles in the league. But this is a guy, you're going to take him in the first round, but you probably don't want to start him right away because
Because he's
he needs the technique
raw.
work. He's extremely raw. So if you're able to get him in the right situation with a good O-line coach where he's not being thrust into action immediately, he could, like, the ceiling is astronomical for this guy. I really am a big fan of Tyler Guyton. And not only was he one of those coachable guys at the Senior Bowl, he was the motivational guy on that offense, like picking up the other linemen. He, having good plays against defensive linemen, he'd be dapping him up afterwards like, "That was fucking awesome what you did there," and blah, 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 because it's all a learning experience for him. He is such a team-centric dude. Like, he's gonna be great for your squad. Kind of the opposite of a guy in the past, like a Trevor Penning, who is out there pissing everyone off.
Yeah, just fucking shitting in everybody's cornflakes, causing fights.
Yeah, he's gonna be the guy that is everyone on the team is gonna wanna rally around type of offensive lineman, and I fucking love that for him. And the stuff that you can't coach, the athleticism, he's got all that. Like, the guy, you look at a guy like a Derrick Henry and be like, he is a man amongst men in a room full of men playing NFL football.
Yeah.
Because he's just that much bigger. Like, it's like you just took a picture of a running back and expanded by 150%. He's kind of that with the tackle, where like a leaner, I mean, he's still a big boy, but a leaner tackle that is just shitloads of muscle. I'm thinking like Francis Ngannou style type of fucking dude,
Yeah.
big fucking dude out there, just raw fucking athletic talent. And if you were able to coach that technique in to a guy that really wants to learn it, you might have a gem in this. Realistically, I think he will probably go end of the first round just because he needs that time to be tailored. But a team like the Dallas Cowboys, who just lost Tyron Smith, that's going to fall in love with these athletic traits and isn't going to have to immediately start him because they have some options there, in a year or two, he could be a fantastic tackle on either side for them.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. So my next guy, and this could be the first tackle off the board. based on reports, and went to a massive school. J.C. Latham, man, there's another enormous goddamn human being, 6'6", 342 pounds, but again, lined up at right tackle, so might not be the first one off the board. Left tackles are higher premium than a right tackle is, but this guy is a good run blocker for being as big as he is a really, really good run blocker, will bury a defender with his drive off the ball. As a pass blocker, not bad, but there are some things that I would like to see better. And it's his set. When he sets, he oversets, and he oversets laterally. So anytime you get too lateral, you become immediately susceptible to the inside move. And that's really my only knock. If he can find a way to kind of clean up his sets where he's not getting so lateral, maybe a little bit more vertical, I think he could be really, really good there. Active hands helps him. But when he oversets, those active hands turn into grabs. So he's penalized quite a bit. But really, if he just stops oversetting, he will be fine because he is so well built and a good athlete.
Yeah, another big boy. He is a right tackle to me, though I do see some guard flexibility. A couple years ago, he did play a little bit of right guard as well. I'm not as high on him as some are. Now, again, a guy that is going to be a first round guy, I think a little bit later first round. Big boy. He's to me not as athletic as you would want, but that's kind of why he's playing a little bit more on the right side. Really good, again, with the run blocking stuff. More of a zone run scheme guy rather than a gap scheme. So if you are hard into finding guys who are set to one mold or the other, definitely would be leaning a little bit more towards the zone scheme. I just think that he's good at blocking, but you're going to have those talented edge rushers that once they put a move on him, it's kind of over.
It's the finesse game that's going to kill him.
Yeah, he has good footwork and good balance to the point of attack, but then I don't want to say his feet get cemented, but once he gets to that initial block, then he will lose his balance as soon as a competent pass rush move is moved on him, which is, again, you brought up penalties. He had 18 penalties over the past 2 years because he will have to get grabby to try to maintain that block. So to me, he is a late first round guy, purely right tackle. You're going to see, I see him get projected more often to the Jets at pick 10, and I hate it because I think that they need a left
This kid's
tackle.
flying up the board. He's flying up the board.
And the reports that I kind of heard out of Mobile Senior Bowl was that they were a little bit disappointed with how he did out there. And his stock had kind of dropped a little bit there and has slowly been creeping back up. He's absolutely a first round talent at tackle. He's not even the best right tackle in this class to me, though. So for him to be going potentially as high as 10, I think is a little bit rich for my blood.
Okay. All right. Another guy that I really like, Olufashano, man. Or I want to make sure Fashanu is how you pronounce it, right?
I believe it's Fashanu. I hear some people say Fashanu, but more often than not, Fashanu.
Yeah, Olufashanu. Really good athlete.
Yiwa.
Yeah, I doing the Olu. I'm just going with that's what his first name is. He's a good athlete, man, but it doesn't necessarily show up when you watch game film. Like, all of his testing numbers were really, really good. But when you watch him, there are times where he's inconsistent. But he's also really young, man. He's going to be 21 years old when he's drafted. But there are things that you love. He's never allowed a sack in his time at Penn State. Like, that's going against really fucking good competition. So not allowing a sack is awesome. But it doesn't mean that he's not allowing pressure. And this is where he is going to fall down the draft board a little bit for me, is guys that are really good at converting speed to power will put him in the lap of the quarterback. You're not going to beat him with pure speed. He's athletic enough to mirror you all the way and push you right past. But if you can convert speed to power, he is slow getting his foot down for that anchor. When you make that conversion, and he will get driven back into the quarterback's lap. If it weren't for his strength, he would normally end up on his back. How out of position he is, but like he's really good if you're dealing with a finesse guy, like somebody who just a pure speed rusher. Let's see what else do I got here on him. For sure, first rounder. But I would not be surprised if he struggles initially because of the play strength that he's going to go up against in the NFL. So, what do you got?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with him is the strength. He's still young. He's only 21 years old. So when you look at the age, you're like, there's a lot of room for improvement there. But 3 years being with the Nittany Lions in Penn State, they have a very good weight room, good strength and conditioning program, and he doesn't look like he has 3 years of Penn State strength and conditioning. He is very athletic. He's prototypical size, 6'6", 319, 320-ish. He's traditionally seen as the second best left tackle prospect on the board, and he scares me a little bit because he doesn't have the play strength that I'm looking for yet. And yeah, could you possibly put that on in an NFL weight room? Absolutely. But if they haven't done it yet in 3 years at Penn State, that definitely worries me a little bit. He plays a little bit higher with the shoulders and head and stuff like that I'd like to see. And that's the thing is that he'll get out there, he'll get engaged with the block, but it's going to be the strength issue for me where he is going to get pushed back into that quarterback that's going to scare me a little bit. And his technique is already pretty decent. So it's the strength of going up against grown-ass men in the NFL that is a worry to me.
Yeah. And you brought up the fact that he plays tall. I think that probably hurts him with his play strength, but it's very apparent that he plays way too tall. So when I'm doing all this, when I'm doing my breakdowns, I've been trying to get Graydon to watch and do it with me to learn a little bit more about the game. I mean, especially when we're doing the offensive line, I'm like, dude, come and watch. Look at what these guys are doing, and we'll kind of break them down. We're watching some stuff on Olu, and Graydon looks to me and goes, like, he's standing up way too tall, right? I was like, yeah, yes, he is. So, my 11-year-old can see, and he played tackle this last year. Yeah, he stands too tall, and that also hurts that play strength. So there's some technique things that he needs to get cleaned up, but he's still pretty sound technical wise. It's just they're nice prospect. I like him. He's gonna struggle initially, though.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and for like I said, for a lot of people, he's the number 2 left tackle on the board, with Joe Alt being the obvious number 1.
Right.
To me, he's actually my second left tackle on the board, or my third left tackle on the board. I like Troy Fautanu out of Washington a little bit better. Fautanu was expected like one of the better left tackles in college football last year, but there's questions about his arm length and things like that, whether or not he would be able to play tackle at the NFL level. So initially in the process, he was being projected as a guard, someone that was going to have to kick in. And I think that Fautanu would be a fantastic guard. But then he comes to the combine and Senior Bowl, and they get his measurement in, and he's got normal-sized arms, what you'd be expecting for a tackle. A great athlete with technique. He's kind of that good pairing. He's not going to hit the ceiling of a Joe Alt, but he's a guy that I actually like a lot as a left tackle who, if you don't need the left tackle immediately, he's going to be able to play a little bit of guard and stuff for you. He's got that position flexibility. And I don't have too many complaints about him other than his ceiling isn't as high. I talked about those Jets needing a tackle, right? Well, they need a lot of help all over the offensive line, and they already have some guys there that have some flexibility in position. Fautanu, to me, makes the most sense for them, with him being probably available by pick 10 still, but them not having a fully fleshed out position for everyone. Like Elijah Vera Tucker on that offensive line, he could play tackle, he could play guard, he can play left and right side. Find what AVT does best, put him in that spot, and then you're able to fill in the gaps with Fautanu, and you're going to get a high-level player, whether that is at left tackle or left guard or something like that. So I think that that's like a really solid landing spot for him there to go to the Jets. But a guy he's my second-ranked left tackle out of this group.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about a guy next that is a late, possibly not even drafted dude. And if you don't know, anybody who is watching who doesn't know, I was born here in Akron, Ohio, and then we moved around a lot, and I ended up graduating high school from the University of Wyoming. Really badly wanted to go play football at the University of Wyoming because I knew I wasn't good enough to play at Ohio State. But that didn't happen. So I love watching these guys from Wyoming, and they come in. Some of these guys are really good. The linebackers are pretty good coming out of Wyoming typically. Well, Wyoming has a dude at tackle named Frank Crum that blew up the fucking combine. RAS score through the goddamn roof. But there are some massive things that are gonna hurt him. This is somebody probably no earlier than the 6th round could get picked up. Will probably be a UDFA, but I want to talk about so Frank Crum, dude is a straight line athlete. He's plenty athletic in a straight line. His problem though is that tackle, which is what he plays, is not played in a straight line. Lacks that lateral quickness to make him an exciting prospect, but I think that if you kicked him back over to the right side of the line, because that's where he started his career playing at Wyoming, was right tackle. And then this last year they transitioned to the left. If you kick him over to the right-hand side, I think he can be serviceable as, a backup and really kind of stick around a team for a while. Tall, long arms, but is not great in pass pro because of the lateral quickness. And when he does get out and starts to move a little bit, his balance is really, really fucking bad. Like I watching the Texas game, because I love rooting against Texas and I root for Wyoming. There were times that he's ending up on the ground, like chest, belly, face straight down because he's overextending because he doesn't have the quickness to get out there. Frank Crum is a guy that I think is going to be a fun dude to kind of track as a fan of Wyoming football, but he's going to be a very late draft pick or a UDFA. Could be a special teamer though, because he is so athletic, depending on what special teams looks like going forward with the rule changes. Traditionally now would be a great special teamer though.
Alrighty, yeah, and this was a guy again that we talked before the show about it. I didn't even really heard of. Interesting. Now, RAS, for those Mike brought that up, that's the relative athletic score. Was created by Kent Lee Platt a while back. It compares players athletically to one another, so that way you can kind of see, okay, this guy's athleticism versus this guy's athleticism is basically coming from their combine or pro day. And those agility drills and sprints and things like that. It gives you kind of a baseline of where these guys are sitting historically athletically. So high RAS scores, obviously, in a athletic game are a good thing. They don't mean everything. I know there's some draft analysts that just get such a hard on over RAS, but you've got to really pair that with the film and the technique and stuff as well, because you could have a track star who can't play fucking football. But when you're doing a full evaluation, RAS definitely fits in there.
Yeah, he scored a 9.95 in his RAS score out of 10. So he's an athlete. If you can find a way to get this kid to play within himself, could be a nice little pickup.
Absolutely. Are there any other tackles that you want to talk about?
No, I'm good on the tackles, man.
All right. So a real quick rundown here, though, of guys that I think that are a names to watch, because these guys could be day one starters or super high upside, or guys that you can expect in the first couple rounds. So of course you have Joe, and this isn't PFF's order on stuff right here. It's not necessarily my order of grading or ranking by any means, but you have Joe Alt, an obvious guy. Talise Fuaga. It's actually Fuanga. There's a silent N in there that you don't see right before the G. Talise Fuanga, who is my favorite right tackle in this class. Like, if we weren't looking at all left tackles, Fuanga is with a dot. Love this dude. He's going to be fantastic. Right tackle, but he can play some guard too. But love Fuanga. Choi Fatanu, Olu Fashanu, JC Latham that we already talked about. You also have an Amarius Mims, another guy who's a little bit raw in technique, played for Georgia, but big dude, 6'7", 340, and very athletic at that size. Someone that we're actually going to probably talk about here in our next grouping, who played tackle in college, Graham Barton. Projects a lot more to being an interior offensive lineman, either at guard or center in the NFL. Tyler Guyton, we talked about. You have Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. This is our fringe first round territory. Jordan Morgan kind of goes up and down boards, but I think he's a fringe first round guy. Now looking into the second round, you have a Kingsley Suamatia and Kieran Amadenije out of Yale, Patrick Paul out of Houston, and then another guy that has played a lot of tackle, but is probably going to be a guard at the next level, Dominic Pooney out of Kentucky. A lot of people really like Pooney's film, but thinks that he's not going to be a tackle at the NFL level, probably a guard. So we can talk a little bit about him here in a minute. And then after that, we have a pretty severe drop off in talent. So those last couple names that I brought up there, you're talking about into the second round, potentially third round type territory if one of them falls a little bit. But just talking about tackles, we're somewhere between 9 and 13 guys that should be going in the first 2 rounds as far as tackles. And these are guys that can probably start pretty quick. Now, one guy that we didn't talk about that is a little bit later down the boards that I really, really like is Javon Foster out of Missouri. So Javon Foster, super high PFF grades his entire time playing, 6'5", 319. I think he projects well to be a left tackle in the league. He just needs a lot of work. He is a little bit older. He, I believe, had 5 years there at Missouri, and each year slowly stepped up the amount of games and stuff that he played. He only really started like the past 2 years. He's another guy that is extremely athletically talented, needs work on technique. He did not get the technique coaching that he needed there at Missouri, but with those athletic skills and traits that he has, and he's able to win a lot with that athleticism at the level that he's playing at. If you're able to pair some technique with that, this is a guy that, again, I'm thinking you can probably get him in the 4th, maybe 5th round. And he's a guy that you're not going to expect to start right away. 2 to 3 years of tutelage on with a good offensive line coach, he could probably step in and be at least a league average starter, possibly at left tackle, I think, with some upside there.
Do you think he stays at left tackle, or do you think he kicks over to the right-hand side?
I view him as more of a left tackle, personally. It's where he played all of his snaps throughout his college career. He had 930 snaps in 2021, 881 in 22, and 898 in 2023. He's an okay gap guy as well. Really fucking good with the zone scheme. And again, we're talking Missouri's SEC, right?
Yep, SEC school.
And that's the level of talent that he was going up against week in and week out was phenomenal. And again, technique lacking, but that athleticism, he was able to win with that like 9 times out of 10. So he's a guy that at the NFL level, that's where you start to see the athleticism isn't going to translate to wins as much. You need that technique, and that's the perfect. You can only teach athleticism so much. It's a natural gifted, God-given talent. It's the technique where you get him behind a good offensive line coach that you can hopefully teach that guy some of that technique and get some good dividends out of it.
All right. Okay, so you got any other tackles you want to go over? Any other late round guys? Or are we ready to slide inside to the guard position?
That's my main guy. That's if I'm looking at tackles and at a guy who is a later round, mid round type of guy who really, in my mind, has starter potential after a year or two. He's the only one. We really see a drop off after that. It is such a top heavy class with the tackle group, but it's not like, oh, you've got 3 or 4 top heavy and then it's whatever. It is a massive class.
9 to 13.
Yeah. You're having a lot of guys who are you're gonna recognize those names going forward.
All right. Well, let's talk about guards. So go ahead and fire us up, man. Because if I'm gonna go pee and then I'll be right back.
All right. So I'm going to talk about Graham Barton right now. Because
I was gonna talk about Graham in the center spot, but we'll do it then as well, because like I said, Graham Barton played tackle in college, but he's got flexibility at all the positions. He projects best to be a center probably in the NFL, but
because of his capabilities and the fact that he can play basically anywhere on the line, you'll get diminishing returns the further that you move him away from center. But I think he's a starter at all the spots along the line. So we'll focus on his main position at center when we get to those as being kind of his top spot. But with the guards, so I think Mike and I are going to be a little bit off on this as far as how we rate this guard class. To me, I think that you're getting down in the 5th and 6th round where you still have some guys that are going to be starters in this league. I don't know if the NFL views them as much this way because we saw all that guard movement in free agency this year, big contracts going out, $20 million a year to some guards, which is unheard of money for them. And good for those guys going and get their money. The thing with guards is that they are traditionally one of the longer developing positions in the NFL. It takes these guys a while to get there. And then even then, some of your top rated guards in the draft end up never becoming anything in the NFL. So it's one of the higher miss positions as far as grading. That being said, I think we got some really good guards in this class. With the top one being Christian Haynes out of Connecticut. Christian Haynes is fucking fantastic. If guards weren't so devalued as a position, I think he's a first round caliber player, but they are generally devalued in the NFL. I don't see any way though that he gets out of the second round. Fantastic player. Christian Haynes, we're talking about out of UConn right now. He's 6'2", 313, redshirt senior. Really, really good pulling in a zone scheme. Gap grades okay, but fantastic run blocker, fantastic pass blocker. I think he should be out of this group the easiest plug and play day one starter at guard for a team out there.
Really? You got Christian as the highest?
I do.
Okay. All right. So I mean, I got Cooper Beebe as my guy, my number one guard.
And I love Cooper Beebe as well.
Yeah, he's fun to fucking watch because he puts people on the ground. He does have a tendency to lean a little bit, a little over the toes.
Are we talking about Beebe or
Beebe? Beebe. I'm sorry. I'll keep going with Haynes.
No, that's pretty much what I have for Haynes. Is I think that he is absolutely plug and play day one guy. In guards, I guess, have a little bit more flexibility with which side they play on. Right. He's played right guard his whole career, but I think that he's plug and play at either spot in the NFL.
Okay. Well, I'll go with my first guy then, and we'll talk about Cooper Beebe since we both like this guy.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, he does have a tendency to lean a little bit too far. But if he runs into you while he's leaned, you're fucking done. He is going to run right through you like a goddamn Mack truck. But there are things that you don't necessarily love. Like, this is a guy, in my opinion, he's got to be in a gap scheme. I don't know if he's necessarily athletic enough to get out and do all the things I want to do. He's not a bad puller, but he's not a good one. If you're going to have him pull, I think you got to give pin pull action, pull that short side, because I don't think he's going to be able to get out there quick enough to really do what you want him to do. In the right scheme, though, this guy could be fucking dangerous. And the last place I want to see him go is to Baltimore. Like, I do not want to see Derrick Henry running behind a Cooper Beebe in any scenario fucking ever as a Browns fan. Because Cooper is a guy that will bury you in the run game. He's okay as a pass blocker. I mean, there are things that obviously need some improvement, but this guy is a run first, run heavy guard in a gap scheme that will just bury you, and then does a great job of also getting up to the second level.
And see,
in a straight line.
I like him in a zone almost better, and I think that he is a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. This is a guy that played a little bit at left tackle, a little bit at right tackle, but primarily at left guard in his college career. One of the smartest offensive linemen. He's got good football IQ. His athleticism is just lacking a little bit. He's slow off the ball. His feet are a little bit slow. But he is a big boy, 6'4", 335. I mean, all these guys are big boys. Let's fucking be real. But to me, he projects really well to be a guard. I like him at the left side a little bit better, just because he has no experience at right guard. But because he does have experience at the tackle spots, again, that is another plus for him, is that he's got that knowledge the football IQ, and the ability to kind of play a swing role on an offensive line. That's going to help him stick to a squad early on. I like him as high as a second round pick. He's probably going to be going more third through fifth round. I've seen him drop in some mocks, criminally low, in my opinion, into the fourth and fifth round, into like pick 140 range, which I don't think that's good.
It's way too late.
it's-
I got a second round grade on BB.
and that's I think that he's another guy that I would pluck him right away and throw him in at a left guard, and I think that he's going to be able to succeed as long as he's got some decent talent around him. But with the football smarts, like if you can find an athlete along the offensive line, we talked about that a lot with these tackles. Some of these guys are extremely athletically gifted. That's awesome. But it's an offensive lineman that we're talking about. We're not talking
Right.
about the best athletes on the field, We're talking about big boys,
Especially at guard.
people movers. Yeah. And so I'm not downing him that much for not being as much of an athlete. Again, slow out the ball. His feet can be a little bit heavy against twitchier guys and lets guys get across his face, but he's a guy that I think in the interior of the offensive line, those risks are mitigated quite a bit. I really, really like Cooper Beebe a lot. He's one of my favorite guard prospects, especially and for people that I'm scouting for my Vikings who don't have a second round pick, don't have a third round pick right now. A guy that if he were to somehow fall to the fourth round, like I would be all over him because I think he ends up becoming our day one starter at left guard, or maybe not day one, but sometime this season, like he could be starting along an offensive line like that. And I do think that he kind of gets underrated and overlooked because of that. But I really like Cooper.
All right. So who do you got next? You want me to go?
You go, because I mean I've got a couple other guards and stuff that I like. Like I said,
guards are
I
tough
think
this year, man.
you and I are going to be a little bit off on it because I have guys. It's not as deep of a class by means like of the tackle or whatever, but again, we're going to be getting into some guys going into the fifth round that I still am relatively positive on. Fifth and sixth round that I'm relatively positive on as far as their trajectory for long-term career in the NFL.
Okay. Well, the next guy I'm going to talk about is going to be a little later as well. Trevor Keegan out of Michigan. Fourth, fifth round is probably where I see him going as well. But this guy's another one. Great in the run game, man. Really good with bringing his hips. Excellent play strength. I mean, if you turn on any Michigan game, you're going to see that on full display. They run behind this guy all the time because he's a fucking road grader. But he's not a great pass blocker, and he's not necessarily a great athlete either. This is another guy you go to a run-heavy scheme, gap scheme, and he is going to power people, dig guys out of holes, and that's exactly what you're looking for if that's what your scheme is. This is a guy that you take. You can take him later on. Needs to be better with his hands and pass protection. Don't overextend. But I think his long-term success is really going to be dependent on scheme fit. If he goes to a place that's West Coast offense or real wide zone scheme, I don't know if he's going to be athletic enough to keep up with that. But if he goes to the right scheme fit, though, he could be a starter inside of a year and be efficient there for a long time.
Yeah, that's I think like the low end that we're looking at is John Runyon, who is kind of a lower rated guard that just ended up getting picked up by the Giants, I believe, comes from the Packers organization. But I think like high end, we're talking about a guy that plays a lot like a Steve Hutchinson from the NFL, where like guards again criminally underrated a lot of times. But I like Keegan a lot. I think fourth, fifth round, the potential I guess for him to fall into the sixth round, but I really don't see that happening. Like fifth round, I think is the baseline floor for him. He is just that traditional mauler kind of guard. I mean, both of those guards in the Michigan scheme before Zach Zinter went down with the leg injury, like they look like the prototypical guys you would expect to be long-term interior offensive linemen in the NFL. Definitely explosive in the hips. It's just the hand placement, not fantastic. He likes to use his forearms a little bit more in blocking than you'd like to see. And sustaining himself against that NFL type of interior rusher, the athleticism that some of those guys, especially not like the bowling ball guys in the interior, but the more athletic ones, he'll have a little bit more difficulty there. But again, a lot of these things are covered up because you're on the interior line, you're getting help and shifting around with the blocking. As long as you have a good competent coaching scheme there. He's another one of those guys that is viewed as high IQ as well. Not crazy athleticism, but high IQ. I mean, those linemen in Michigan this year were really fucking good. And so to me, it's surprising that he is actually kind of rated as low as he is. But again, I think that's more so interior offensive linemen, specifically guards, is sort of one of the more criminally underrated groupings in the NFL.
Okay. Good. What other guards you
Also
got, man?
projects left side. That's pretty much all he played in college.
Yeah.
Another guy that I brought up.
A couple write-ups because their guards are tough this year. But go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
Another guy that I just had brought up, Zach Zinter, is going to be interesting to see where he actually gets taken. Zach Zinter looked like the better guard out of the two, Keegan and Zinter. They're from Michigan. But Zach had a horrible leg injury this year, broke his leg. There was questions, is this guy going to get to play football again type of stuff? And when you bring that into the conversation, that is going to tank a guy's draft stock. If we're just looking at what he puts out on film, he is a better guard than Keegan. But he already had some movement limitations, and now he's going to have more potentially with that and that knee. It's all going to be about the medicals and how those check out. He's a guy that I feel like if you draft him, he's not going to be really playing or practicing much this year. And those are the type of guys, especially on the interior, that are going to end up being like a 4th round grade that's going to fall to 7th round or something like that, which sucks for him. But hopefully he's going to be healthy enough in the future to be a competent offensive lineman. Other guards, 2 big names that are probably going to be going somewhere between round 2 and 3. Christian Mahogany out of Boston College and Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State. Mason McCormick, he's been a guy that's been rising a lot on draft boards. He played for a small school there with South Dakota, but really like him. I like BB better personally, but apparently NFL scouts and stuff are liking McCormick better than BB. I kind of have them in the same kind of range. And then Mahogany is a step above them. He's only a guard, powerful in the run game, inconsistent in the pass game. Mostly man gap type of scheme guy. But I'm definitely a fan of Mahogany. And then when we start looking a little bit later down, some people like Javion Cohen out of Miami. I'm not as big of a fan, but he's one of those guys that 6th, 7th round that you should hopefully be able to find a little bit of developmental potential here. And that's kind of where the guards sit for me. I think that you've got 5 decent guards here that will be taken in rounds, 2 through 5, and then a couple flyers and like a Zinter and stuff like that that'll be taken later on who have the potential to develop. That's the other thing too, is that these guards, every year we see it where guys are taken 5th, 6th, 7th round and they're Pro Bowlers by year 3. So it's really tough to project these guys just because, I don't want to say the offensive line coaching at the college level isn't good, but you really start getting good quality coaching at the NFL level where you're going to see guys blossom into something that they never showed in college.
Yeah. Wyatt Teller was a 5th round pick, and he has turned himself into an all-pro guard. So you can get these guys late. But I do want to bring up the fact that Christian Mahogany is already made the all-name team because Christian Mahogany is a fucking dope name.
Yep. And then one guy who I do not want to skip over here, Dominic Pooney out of Kansas. So again, guy who's listed at tackle. This last year he played tackle at left tackle, but the year before he played almost all of his snaps at left guard, and I think he projects way better to be a left guard in the league. 6'5", 320. Was a no-star recruit coming into Kansas, but he is massive and tough. He has kind of poor pad level, will be a little bit top heavy, and doesn't maintain his blocks well when playing on the outside, at least on tape. But that isn't going to be much of a problem if he ends up moving into the guard spot. I think that Pooney is a guy that is in that Mahogany and McCormick and BB level where he's going to be taken in rounds 2 through 3 and end up being a solid starting guard.
Okay. All right.
Alrighty.
I got nothing else on guards, man. I'm ready to transition over to the centers if you are.
Alrighty, go for it. Who do you got as some of your favorite centers in this class?
Well, my favorite center in this class is fucking everybody's favorite center in this class, or at least it should be. It's Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yeah. Now I sent you that video of his interview there at the combine, right? What'd you think of that?
Dude, I mean, what's not to love about this guy? Seriously.
Yeah.
Like he's fun. Like he cares about what he's doing. He's fucking excellent on the football field. Like, and this boy, he is thick as hell. That boy is
Big
thick
neck on him.
as fuck. He don't even got a neck, man.
Mhm.
He's gonna be so good. Like he's gonna be able to hold up against any interior pass rusher that you run up against. Really good fucking run blocker. Finishes through the whistle. Like he hand placement pretty good. Does he have the ability to maybe get pushed backward? Sure, but when you're going up against other, 350 pounders, that's going to happen. He had a great showing at Senior Bowl, held his own against Devondre Sweat. Like he's
one of the only
stud.
people to hold their own against Devondre Sweat.
Exactly.
Again, the
like
guy
this
who's 360 fucking pounds.
Yeah, that's important. Like you are putting him up against the biggest dude he's gonna see in the NFL, and he's able to hold up against it. Devondre is gonna be a dude. Who's the other guy from Michigan? Was it last year? Their D tackle, massive dude, big strong kid. Cannot remember his name. Went to the Cowboys. I can't remember his name now, but in that same,
I want to say Chris Jenkins, but that's the guy this year.
Yeah. Listen, JPJ is a stud. He's going to be really good. He's huge. I also think that he's capable of blocking in any scheme. It doesn't matter because he's athletic enough. So that's the dude that you should want for your squad if you need a center. Do I think he will go in the first round? I don't know. It's tough because he's a center. This is a devalued position. If he does go in the first round, somebody's going to get a great player because it's going to be late in the first round would be my guess.
I think like round pick 18, 19 type of range is the starting point. But I do think that he'll go in the first round just because not only like he's played some other spots in the interior offensive line and been extremely good at them in his college career. He's just, head and shoulders above everyone else when he plays center. He's got the absolute play strength that you want, but he also has all the finesse that you want as well. I love looking through some of the PFF stuff on him. Destroyer of world mentality. The only knock that they have on him here, and the only thing that because I was really struggling coming up with knocks on him, is that his arms are short, even for an interior player, but he makes up for it with the tenacity. If he loses a rep, he doesn't ever give up on it. Like he is continuing with the rep, even if he's starting to lose a rep. And then like centers a lot of time are kind of the motivational leaders along offensive lines and things like that. They have that connection with the quarterback and whatnot. He is charismatic. He is fun. We're losing a Kelsey this year, and I feel like we're getting another character right back in the league with a JPJ. People are going to fall in love with him as a player. I definitely have. I'm excited to see where he goes. He's absolutely the type of guy that I would love to see on my team. There's no way that's fucking happening unless the Vikings don't trade up their picks for a quarterback and we get him with pick 23. Yeah, love JPJ.
Well, and where do you think that he is project? Like when you're looking at that 18 and later on, you're thinking what? Jacksonville, you guys,
Seattle is a great spot for him.
I would also not be surprised if Chicago really wants to fucking try to quickly turn this thing around. If you think he goes in the first round, maybe they make a play to get up if he's still available late in the mid-20s. Or if he falls, you can guarantee this kid's going to Chicago with the first pick in the second round. Or whatever pick they have of their own in the second round. Because the Panthers should, I believe they have their second round pick, but
I don't know. They've been such a fucking train wreck. But yeah, I truly believe though that despite the devaluing of the position, he is such an outstanding elite prospect. Again, like we've talked in the past couple of years, it seems like every year we've got one guy who by far and away is the best center prospect in the draft. We had the guy out of Minnesota last year. It's Jackson Powers Johnson.
AMS, right?
Yeah, it's JPJ this year. And I do really feel like starting getting into that 20s range in the first round, someone's going to take a shot on him because he really does look like a plug and play 12 to 15-year starter anywhere along that interior line. If you don't need a center right now, you can take him and let him play guard, and he will be an above average to really good starting guard. And then once you get him playing
Be
at
a
center,
fucking
he's going to
Pro
be
Bowl guard, man.
fantastic. So, all right, after JPJ, who you got?
Graham Barton is my next guy. And this is a tough eval because when you look at everything, you watch his fucking tape, everything is pretty much all out at the left tackle spot. But he's almost certainly not going to play tackle in the NFL. He's going to have to kick inside. Got some work at the Senior Bowl at the center spot. Played really well. Anchors really well. Resets quickly. Rarely gets caught with a foot in the air on a counter move, which is huge. Like when those guys go and they make that counter, that inside move or whatever it is, he gets his feet down so quick that he's able to reset. So you don't really have to worry about, him being driven back into the lap of the quarterback. But his arms are really short, so he's not going to play fucking tackle. He's going to kick in. I think this is a guy who could also be an immediate impact on a team. Could start right away, but he's not going to go in the first round, in my opinion. I think he'll fall second, third round because he's going to convert from a tackle to somewhere inside.
And I think if there's anything that's going to keep him up there in like the end of the first round or high second round, it's going to be the positional flexibility. Because yes, does he not have the physical size and stuff that you want to be playing at left tackle consistently? He's got elite level traits and stuff like that for a center position, which is why again Senior Bowl they played him a lot at the center spot in practices, but they actually played him all along the line during the practices, and he did well at all of them. But again, it starts to become diminishing returns as you move him further out away from the ball on that line. But he's a guy that, because of that position versatility, a team like the Packers, who they move their guys all along the fucking line, and those guys are playing all sorts of different positions. A team that has some good guys here, some bad guys here, and stuff like that, but they don't know exactly what the plan for the future going forward is. You just take a guy with a lot of talent and know that we're going to be able to plug and play, start him. He might be a B player at guard right now for us, or a B player at tackle for us, but that's making our line better right now. And long term, he projects out to be an A for a center. But we've got that flexibility with him. That I think is still going to keep him in that top end of the second round, which I've seen a lot of mocks where he sneaks into the first round, late in the first round for some of those teams that are able to take they're not being as direct with their needs. They're able to take just talented guys who are going to be able to help out their football team. He sneaks in the first round sometimes with those, but second round for sure. Just great versatility, strong grip. He's on his toes a little bit too much, and as the play goes along, you start to see some of the strength diminish. The arm size not fantastic for him, but tough, decent movement, and really projects well to be a really good center in this draft. I have him as my third center for this one, because he doesn't have the history of playing the position. He easily could come out as being the second center when it's all said and done in this draft, like second best out of the group. But because he traditionally hasn't played there as much, that's why I knock him just a little bit, because you might need more coaching, and it might take a little bit more time for him to fully excel at using those skills in the center position. But my second guy is Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. I think that he also is one of those plug and play guys. He's nowhere near, like, he is definitely a tier below JPJ, but he's a guy that I do as well think can start day one. I think he will have a year, maybe a little bit more of lumps in his game. But I think long term projects out to be a great center, also interior offensive lineman. I mean, he doesn't have any history of playing the guard spots, but as needed, I think that he could play any of those guard spots as well. His arms are short, but they're still requisite for center length arms. He's going to lose some reps with players going across his face on stunts and things like that. And he's not going to blow you up with power contact, but he is definitely one of those guys that once you engage, he's not losing them. So I definitely like Zach Frazier as well. I think second round is a perfect spot for him. Third round, I think it'd be crazy if he falls all the way to the third.
Okay. Another guy that I like out of this class, I mean, I like him, but he's gonna slide a little bit. He's not gonna be early round. But Bo Limmer, natural center, but with some guard flexibility, good against big interior rushers. Also, one of the few guys that did a decent job of keeping Sweat from driving him 10 yards into the fucking backfield at the Senior Bowl. I'd like to see some better movement to the second level. A center, that's a guy that typically is gonna be uncovered. He's gonna be combo blocks up to the second level. So I want to see that second level block be a little bit better. But he's really good in his anchor in the pass set. Hand placement could be a little bit better, but it's the way that he sets that can kind of hurt him. If you can get to his left shoulder, you have a chance to kind of spin him around. For some reason, when you get to that side of him, his feet stop moving. So I think he's really good. Now, this is just the stuff that I saw. It's probably not like this all of the time, but when they're on that left shoulder, on that offhand, he lets it slide a little bit too much. That hand placement needs to be better on this offhand. But Bo Limmer is a guy that I like that you can get third round, maybe even on a day 3.
Yeah, I think 4th, 5th round is a good spot for him. And I'm a fan of Bo Limmer. I think that he's going to end up being a starter as well in the league. Like you brought up, good flexibility, played both at guard and center in college. Pass protection is just his weakness. Like he's great in the run game. I'd like to see him pack on a little bit more weight. He's a little bit leaner than I would like for him right now. 302, and that was him maintaining that bulk at 6'5", as much as possible. But in the season, I think he's below 300 pounds in season play. So that's something where he's already got good strength and stuff like that, but his feet do kind of look like they're a little bit in cement in some of those pass blocking reps. But a guy again that I really do like. He really showed out at the Senior Bowl, and raised his stock quite a bit, because he was seen as one of those more like 6th round type of guys until Senior Bowl, and then I mean he's been playing SEC competition as well, and performed very well against them. It's just his pass blocking reps not as good as they could be in college, though he showed out really well in the Senior Bowl. So I think that there's a lot of good stuff to work with Limmer there.
All right. That was my last center prospect. Who else you got, man?
So around that Limmer range, you also have Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia, and a little bit later than that, Drake Nugent out of Michigan. Nugent, another guy that I would like to see him put on a little bit more weight. I think that his floor is kind of like what we have right now with the Vikings and Garrett Bradbury. He can get pushed around a little bit more than you'd like, but if you're able to develop him and put some more weight on him, I think he'd be a decent center in the league. Van Pran, high IQ again, and he could end up projecting into being a starting center in the league, but mostly just for man gap schemes, because he's a little bit limited athletically. But the other guy here, who, if you're going off of RAS scores and athletic traits, Wisconsin's Tanner Bortolini kind of fucking blew up the combine from that center position. You talked about, your guy, fucking Crum, having that RAS score. Well, Tanner Bortolini had the best RAS score of any lineman there at the draft. Fucking blew it out of the park. He's a guy again that's a little bit. I mean, he's 310, but I feel like he looks lighter than that for sure. But he's coming out of a system there in Wisconsin where they are known for having prolific offensive linemen, good running games constantly. This is a guy that's going to be a 6th roundish selection and stuff like that, with great athletic traits that hopefully you can develop into at least a top end backup, or someone that's a good replacement level center in the NFL.
Okay. Well, is that it, big dog? We got no other guys to talk about?
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So that's with your centers, including your Graham Barton out there. We're looking at roughly 6 to 7 guys, in my opinion, that have long-term futures here in the NFL. with a majority of them having upside to becoming starters in the league, which isn't bad for the centers. I mean, some center drafts, we're talking about 2-3 guys that end up making it through being drafted and actually making squads for any decent period of time. So a solid center draft. Again, overall, I really think this is one of the better offensive line drafts that we've seen in a while. But the tackle class is just fucking loaded. And you have a lot of those guys, especially with versatility when you're looking at the interior guys where we might not need a center today. We'll need him tomorrow, but we can take this guy playing at guard and he's going to not be a liability for us and then provide us greater upside in the future, things like that. So I think you're seeing that a lot more with these offensive linemen as we go year in and year out. Is position versatility along the offensive line is always a good thing. A lot of again, I don't want to diminish the college game and the coaching on the offensive line at the college game, but a lot of these guys need technique work, and where they were playing in college might not have been the best fit for them. But an NFL coach is going to say, "Oh, this guy actually is, he played tackle a bunch, but he's actually a good center, like we're seeing with Graham Barton." Or this guy played along the left side at guard his entire college career, but for whatever reason, he's just so much better suited on this right side, and we're going to be able to get that out of him. Things like that. We're going to see a lot more of that, I believe, with these guys. And so them having more positional flexibility, more reps at some of these positions is going to help them in the NFL stick on a squad, because the more spots that you can be useful, the better chance you have of sticking on a squad.
Yeah, absolutely. But with that, man, let's wrap this thing up. So
Alrighty.
Today, offensive line. Next week and the week after is when these breakdowns are probably going to be a lot more crazy. We're going to have probably some disagreements over the next couple of weeks, because the last two position groups we got wide receiver and quarterback. Wide receiver, I think we'll go next week. Week after that, we'll finish with the flurry. We'll hit the quarterbacks. So that'll be back next Saturday. If you guys want to go back and go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know how many disagreements necessarily we're going to have at wide receiver. There are so many fucking wide receivers. Again, we're talking about an insane class at wide receiver, where you see there's reasons to be higher and lower on guys. I've really only got like one guy that I think is being like incredibly overrated. We'll get into that next week. But
right.
It's kind of like pick your poison of which guy you think is going to be fucking awesome. Where a lot of these guys are going to, I believe, at least be solid NFL starters. Some have high potential to fucking pop. So that's going to make next week really fun. Our disagreements are probably going to come a little bit more in the quarterbacks, which is fine.
Yeah. Oh, wait, that's typically where we always have our disagreements. But man, good show. I'm excited for next week and the week after with receivers and quarterbacks. But guys, this is the Lineman Lounge. I'm Mike. That is Evo. If you want to interact with the show, well, go over to the No Sleeves Network. You can read our blogs. You can see all of our shows. It's this show, the Lineman Lounge. That is the talk. You have video game channels of Norsky Gaming. You have my gaming channel, Trauma Romeo Gaming. Also more people coming. There are also links to every social media account that is attached to every single one of those shows or content. So go there, go to that No Sleeves Network, and redirect yourselves over to any one of our socials. Interact with us. Evo typically runs our Facebook stuff and does a great job. I'm the one over on Twitter, and then there's always new content coming out on the short form TikToks for the short amount of time that we still have it, as well as the YouTube shorts. And that's shout out to producer Amber for knocking that out for us. But guys, thanks. Anytime you spend time with us, we appreciate it. Time's the most valuable thing that you have. So anytime you spend it with us, we could not thank you enough. But we are going to get the fuck out of here. I'm Mike. That's Evo. This is the Lineman Lounge. See you.